Facilities that make this program possible are provided by the City of Highland Park. Programs are produced independently by members of the community. The City of Highland Park is not affiliated with the following program or the producers of public access programming and is not responsible for the content. The following program does not reflect the opinions of the City of Highland Park.
Welcome to Chill Out. I'm Pam Chill. I'm one of your hosts for the senior producers of Highland Park. And we have on our program today is going to be about senior orphans. And I'm very pleased to have once again on my show Terry Dreyer. Thank you so much. Welcome. This is your third time, and each time I look forward to you being here because you are such an advocate and such a wealth of information.
Thank you.
You're most welcome. And I do want to also say that you are now an author, which we discussed last time you were on. So we're showing Patient Advocacy Matters, and you're a health advocate, and now you're going into the field of senior orphans.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to do the book, and protecting health, your rights, your life, and your loved ones.
Yes.
All righty. So do you want to give a little brief background on how you got into the field of elder or senior orphans?
Sure. Well, I've been a patient advocate professionally since 2011 after being an ICU nurse for about 39 years. And I just saw that people were starting to really struggle, and the people in our society that I felt most heartbroken about are seniors without anyone to care for them, because 70 to 80% of all caregiving as people age and develop infirmities is done by family. But what happens to people that don't have family, or their family is on the other side of the country? So a senior orphan is essentially somebody who's a little disenfranchised and very vulnerable in today's landscape of healthcare, because it's complicated out there and it's dangerous. We've all heard the statistics about medical error being the third leading cause of death in America. And I think if people do not have an advocate today when they're traversing complex health issues, they're really vulnerable, and the most vulnerable in today's landscape with everything going so fast all the time are seniors without family close by to step out and advocate for them. Mm-hmm. So this is a strong concern of mine, and I just feel that we need to really help people at a greater level that are struggling in this way. Senior orphans sometimes have family, but they're not able to stop everything and come. Some of them have adult children that are working full time, and they are trying to get their kids through college, and some are just not close by at all, and they can't be flying back and forth from other parts of the country all the time when their parents are struggling.
Absolutely. Now, senior orphans, a lot of the millennials think that it's, they delay marriage or they delay having children, and the rate is going up, because I looked at it, the last statistic done was 43 million senior orphans as of 2012. And of course, there may be more now, there may be less, it depends on the age group and, on what infirmities they had. But by the year 2030, it's supposed to, the baby boomers are going to be all coming out, and they're starting to right now. Exactly. As far as, being elder senior orphans.
Yeah, exactly. Right now, Pam, 10,000 people every day are turning 65 in the U.S. And of course, the millennials right now think that they're never going to get old and infirm. But a lot of times they just focused on their career for many years, especially women. Ever since the 50s, women weren't having large families. People were not living in the same communities anymore. So a lot of times women just put off getting married and having a family until it's too late. And then all of a sudden they're 70, 75 years old and starting to develop health problems, and they're thinking, wow, you know, who's going to take care of me when I get old? So it's one of those things that people are becoming more and more aware of today.
Right, and you know, thankfully you are helping. You're very passionate about the group of people that we're dealing with. I just wanted to just reiterate, we're talking about medical, not anywhere of financial.
No.
So, right, you handle the medical part, and just so someone would come to you, and they would obviously have no one else. They don't have a family member. They don't have a close friend. You know, people have moved away, relocated. They've outlived everyone, whatever the situation may be. So they would contact you, and they would sign paperwork, I'm assuming, to make you, you know, legal power of attorney, POA, as they say, for any medical, you know, things that would happen, or be able to, you know, confer with doctors, or reassess medication, do whatever you need to do. But you have that medical background, so you were coming from a caring medical liaison to do that with professionals.
Right, and when people have family on the other side of the country, I'm thinking about one client I had last year. He was a very intelligent man, retired Northwestern professor, and his only son, his only family, he was divorced, was in Massachusetts, had a very high-powered job, had a very successful career, was working 10 or 12 hours a day, and unfortunately, there had been an estrangement at the time of the divorce. So this son did not get along with his father. And his father had a drinking problem, which led to a lot of health problems. And so when I first met him, he was early 60s, but he was very overweight, had a lot of health problems, and he was essentially trying to drink himself to death. But he knew that he needed somebody to be there with him. And, you know, he had already made his son his power of attorney for health care, but I worked very closely with the son as a professional RN patient advocate. So anytime the father went into the hospital, I would call the son, let him know what's going on. If any kind of decisions needed to be made, then they could get a phone consent. And eventually things got so bad that the father just wasn't able to handle his own affairs anymore. And fortunately, they were able to go in and legally take over his financial affairs and work with me on end-of-life issues and everything. So we've seen so many different scenarios. Sometimes couples are senior orphans. So we never have anything to do with people's finances, like you said, Pam, but we will either help the family, or if there's no family left at all, it's sometimes a better option to have a professional RN patient advocate be a power of attorney for health care, and we have a separate addendum to our contract for that. And so I think when we get to know people really well, they trust that we're going to carry through their wishes. We sit down and talk to them about what they want in all possible scenarios, and we have the personality and the strength to stand up and say yes or no in different situations. A lot of times people don't like to talk about this, and I always say no decision is a decision. So if you don't make these decisions ahead of time, they get made for you by hospital personnel that really don't know you. They don't know the whole you. They don't know your emotional, psychological, physical desires, your spiritual background, how you feel about end-of-life issues. And that's where having a real heart-to-heart with a professional can make a big difference in making sure that your values and your wishes are being honored.
Yes, absolutely. So how can someone avoid the calamity of being disabled, of being that they can no longer make their own decisions? And what forms, what needs to be filled out?
Good question. And so people know about getting your affairs in order, but they think it's only about getting your legal affairs in order. So a lot of people that come to us when they're in their 80s today, they still remember the trauma of the Great Depression. And so there's a mentality that they will never have enough money. We took on a client at 98 years old. We got a referral from an attorney, and took on a client about a year and a half ago at 98. She's 100 years old now. And she had nobody left. Her only brother had died. She had never been married. And she was starting to develop dementia and a lot of health problems too, physical health problems. So the lawyer called us in to be her power of attorney for health care, because lawyers generally don't know that much about complex health issues. Today's landscape is full of all kinds of gaps and silos and pitfalls, and if you don't have somebody to advocate for you, well, in fact, even the American Medical Association came out last year and said that everybody today needs a patient advocate. Everybody needs somebody in the background that can step up when calamity hits and move in and help with all those decisions. None of us plan to have a calamity, right? I was just talking to a patient yesterday. She and her husband are elder orphans. Their son is an emergency room doctor in California, but that doesn't do a lot of good when somebody can't be physically present and people fall, they have surgery. This particular woman had some really adverse things happen after surgery. And so I came in the day after surgery and saw, boy, she's got some problems here. So I had to call the doctor and talk to the surgeon and communicate with the son and the husband and develop a plan of care so that she can get strong as quickly as possible and these complications can get resolved. So a lot of times people, when calamity hits, they don't think correctly. You know, so you can't remember anything when you're sick because you're so traumatized, you're in so much pain. You go to the emergency room, you're almost always going to forget something. But if you have a professional advocate that already has written down everything and can communicate
the medications,
clearly,
their ailments,
right,
specialists, people that have to be notified.
Their allergies. Because
absolutely, allergies.
People develop new allergies all the time. So I find that when I walk into a hospital with a professionally prepared medical profile and care plan, the emergency doctors are like, oh, thank you so much. You just saved me 45 minutes of time. Now he can focus on what happened today because he's got the real information written in medical language that's updated constantly, and fewer medical errors are going to be made. Because let's face it, most medical error happens on the way into the hospital and the way out of the hospital, just through miscommunication.
Oh, that's very interesting.
Yeah, yes. People are going in and out of the hospital so quickly right now that it's tough. Communication is a big deal.
What would you advise as far as living communities for seniors?
That's a great idea. So they have a point that you brought up. There are a few new groups growing up in Chicago and the North Shore called villages. And what they are essentially are a naturally occurring senior community, say an apartment building that just happens to have most of their people over 70 years old. And it becomes a village, sort of a big family. If you go away on vacation, I'll check your mail, take care of your cat and everything. If you need a ride to the doctor appointment, I'll do that. But it's, again, lay people mostly. And so but it's a community that's safe so that you know you have a buddy and a friend that can help you. And there are also new living options growing up right now besides assisted living and independent living senior communities. And they are like group homes. Group homes that are built around what we used to call a common when I lived in New England. Like a common park-like area, and then you have different group homes growing up around there. They're kind of rare, but they're a great idea if you want a smaller community. Say
a smaller community and probably a little bit less expensive than, you know. And
more privacy, too. You can have your own little apartment there, but it's for people that don't really like the big, you know, senior living communities. Though there are so many options out now for senior living communities. They're at different price points. They're independent, they're assisted living, there are memory care, and they're all different price points. So When I see people in their 80s that are starting to really seriously struggle with health issues, I always sit down and talk to them about the options for aging in place, moving into an assisted living or an independent living environment, or maybe a building that has both, so that as you age, you can move to different levels of care. These aren't for everybody, but some people really love them. They say, I should have done this a long time ago. Because generally, they have 4 or 5 star chefs on site, and they have a lot of activities. And for people of low income, there's something called supportive living that will take people on Medicaid and take care of them as long as they can be.
How does one find out about this? What resources are available?
Oh, you can go on the Illinois Department of Public Health website, and you can go and search supportive living. And it's a great alternative for people of low income, because I see a lot of people that are embarrassed to talk about finances, and then all of a sudden they come to us and, whoa, they only have maybe $40,000 to their name. Okay, now we're in a crisis mode. Now we have to do some advanced planning really quickly to get them into a safe and supportive environment where they can age at a much more affordable level than they can at home. Because when you're living in a home in the North Shore, it's expensive. You have the mortgage, you have the taxes, you have the upkeep, and you have all kinds of other expenses, food. So it saves a lot of money moving into different levels of care, but people are different, and 86 to 90% of people say they want to stay in their own home, which can be done if you have enough money to hire caregivers to come in and help you as you age. So for people that are independently wealthy, then that's a great option.
I know, I've done a program about it, and it's anywhere from 24-hour care being anywhere from $90,000 to about $128,000 per year.
Yep, exactly. And I tell people that I had a couple in their 90s that we met about a year ago that we're still helping. And the mother was very, very scared of running out of money. So I sat down and I said, how do you want to live the rest of your life? And her top priority was to stay in her home. She loved her home. She decorated it beautifully. It was wonderful. And I said, okay, you can do that as long as we have 24-hour caregivers, because she had dementia and mobility problems, and it had some falls. Her husband had advanced Parkinson's, even though his mind was very sharp. And right now we're managing it with 24-hour caregivers, one caregiver for both of them. And it works okay, but it's expensive. It's $9,000 or $10,000 a month for 24-hour live-in caregivers, and almost twice that much if you have to do 2 12-hour shifts. So I always lay out all the finances, and I say, tell me what you want, and I'm going to show you on a graph what this is going to cost. But it's your money, so you should be able to do what you want with your money.
Right.
And sometimes we get into a little bit of tension with the adult children, because
they envision all their savings in the will.
Exactly. And
being depleted.
I know, but I always say, and most elder law attorneys that I know will say, I don't care about how much money you're leaving to the kids or to charity or anything. You have worked hard your whole life, and it's your right to use that money on yourself. You've always saved for a rainy day. This is the rainy day.
Yes, absolutely.
So it's really true.
Absolutely, yes. So what type of professionals would somebody have to see, and do you coordinate?
Well, I generally do coordinate, and people don't know how complex it is out there. But I say if you want to stay really, really safe, you need a really good wealth manager that can sit down and talk to you about what your financial status is realistically. Let's just look at it, put it out on the board, and then see what options are most likely to serve you. And then the other thing is a good estate planning attorney. Because for people, especially they're running out of money, they don't want to run to a lawyer because they're afraid of the money. But if you spend a little money up front, it's going to save you hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars in the long run to have everything protected. Have all your power of attorney documents set up. If you're running out of money, set up a trust so that you can go on Medicaid earlier and then move into a place that will accept Medicaid, which there are none that will accept Medicaid except for supportive living. So then I explain all that. But in Illinois, we have such financial woes, as you know, that it's taking over a year for Medicaid applications to get approved. The only simple ones that there are to do are older seniors that have nothing. They come to a skilled nursing facility, they own nothing, they have no assets, nothing. Then the social workers at the facility can do a Medicaid application. But for people that own a home or have a spouse at home that they want to stay in the home, it gets complex. So to protect your assets, you need a wealth manager and an estate planning attorney. To protect your physical health issues, you should really get a professional patient advocate if you don't have somebody in your family that has the time, the skill, the personality, and the knowledge to navigate you through a very complex and frightening system.
Yes, absolutely. And to have your wishes respected.
Exactly.
And did you find, though, that a lot of people have like one wish, and then a lot of times, like let's say they were just hypothetically, they're a DNR.
Right.
They're not a DNR. Well, we'll go for that scenario, that they want everything done to them to sustain life. And you find a lot of the social workers within the hospital or health providers will say, you know what, you're not being realistic, and you have to face this, and you're getting, on in years or whatever. Do you find they're trying to dissuade a lot of people?
Well, yes, they are, and the real issue is money. And so today, 25% of our population is using up 85% of the Medicare pot. I mean, we're borrowing on that Medicare pot as a country right now, so something's got to change. So doctors and nurses are hearing about that all the time, and what upsets me is when they try to force or harass a do not resuscitate on somebody or really push hospice. Hospice is great for people that are going to need pain control, need equipment at home, will probably live 3 to 6 months. But if you think that your loved one is going to live for a few days or a week or two, you're not really going to get as much benefit as you think, because people kind of assume that when hospice comes in, you have 24-hour people there at the bedside.
And that doesn't happen.
It doesn't.
No.
A lot of times the pain control nurse practitioners will take over 24 hours to get to somebody's home when somebody's in pain. And I say, that's baloney. If you're in pain, why should you have to wait that long? So there's pros and cons, and we help march people through that. I love the whole philosophy of hospice, but there's a whole financial side of hospice that people are not really aware of, and not everybody really needs it. Sometimes you can just have a do not resuscitate. You can talk to your doctor. You can have everything that you need set up at home, and you can navigate it without. But I think a lot of times family really enjoys that support of hospice, and so they can have support by having their own advocate that's on 24-hour call too.
Right, and people have to realize too that once they go on hospice, they're not eligible for certain medications and certain physical therapy because they are hospice, and it's just something to take into consideration.
Well, it is.
Right, when they do that. So what are the projections of senior orphans coming up? We touched briefly on that.
Well, the numbers are hard to know about because they're hidden. It's a hidden demographic. If I were to guess right now, I would say that there are probably twice as many senior orphans in our country right now as you read about earlier. And that number is only going to grow. If you look at the graphs of how long people are going to be living and how many family members there are to take care of them, it's really frightening. I think it's going to be a national health care crisis, honestly, Pam, because people are living longer but not so well. It's going up like this, and the numbers of people to take care of their aging parents are going down because families are smaller. Within 2 or 3 years, there will be 2 to 3 family members to take care of aging senior orphans over 80 years old, instead of 4 or 5 about 10 years ago. So it's hard to get this number because people aren't coming out of their homes and raising their hand and saying,
And some people are embarrassed as well, because if
course.
they, if they had a falling out with their children, and, people only talk about, the children that they're really proud of, and if not,
I know.
that's not the case, and...
Just look on Facebook.
Right.
I mean, people aren't talking
that
about
they might
their
have
problems.
children and grandchildren, but like you say, they're too busy or they're estranged from them. And so what can you do? What can one do not to put themselves in that situation? I mean, how can you do that as you age?
Well,
not to become a senior orphan, but I mean, sometimes it's just inevitable. But as you're saying, they have to get somebody like you to help with their medical power of attorney and to, obviously steer them in the right direction of who can help them and to protect their needs, their wants, and their finances.
Exactly. That's a great thing. We have 2 different ways that we help people generally. We have an hour-and-a-half consultation if we go out and meet with them and their family or them individually. And in that hour-and-a-half, we'll listen to the whole story. And if all they need is being pointed in the right direction, then we will just go home and do some research and write up a bunch of referrals and write out a mini care plan for them of what they need to do and give them some names of good estate planning attorneys, good trustees or professional trustees that can help manage their finances, and just let them know we're here if you need us, if anything goes wrong, but here's an initial consultation. The other thing that we see is several people lately have heard me talk on WGN. I've been on WGN.
That's one of my favorite stations.
Oh, I love WGN.
I love WGN.
Yeah, so I go on there about once every 8 or 9 months, and people will call me sometimes weeks or months later and say, you know what, I think I'm a senior orphan. I think I need somebody to be there for me if I get into calamity. And people will call and say, my wife and I are pretty healthy now, but we have nobody left. And so we want to get all of our affairs wrapped up right now. And so then we'll talk to them about how we can help them get all their ducks in a row right now. The other people that call us are people in a crisis. They have a family member in ICU in the hospital, or something catastrophic happens and they think things are not going well, so they'll call us in a crisis. We always like seeing people before a crisis, of course, but we help them in crisis mode and then do the complex care management that goes along with getting them in the right facilities. See, hospital care managers and patients generally don't really know the difference between a good nursing home or rehab and a bad one. And right now it's very competitive, and there are a lot of really bad skilled nursing facilities and rehab centers in the greater Chicago and even North Shore area. Some of them have very high infection rates. They do not give quality care. It's all about money. And so we have a very short list of places that we like people to go. And if people do get to the point where they need long-term care, that's a very important decision, and so we help them because we're street smart about the good places, the bad places, what they look like from the inside, how to assess places. And so we'll go in with families and show them how to pick out a good long-term or short-term care facility for their loved ones.
Oh, it can be so beneficial. I mean, this way you can go back to the way you were, and like as you're saying, not end up with C. difficile or MRSA.
Exactly.
Right. Yes.
And
so I just wanted to wrap it up. He's giving us the signal, wrap it up. So you are both an advocate for patients' rights as well as seniors.
Yes.
If you wanted to leave one quick tidbit, what should people do? Do a post, or DNR or not DNR?
Just call for a free 30-minute consultation.
That's the best, and you'll direct them and you'll guide them to where they need to know. Once again, thank you so much, Terry, for appearing on the program. You're a wealth of information, And thank you again so much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Pam.
you.
Okay, bless you.
Alrighty.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very, very much.